Some rivers don't hide monsters. They hide destinies waiting for one fearless heart to awaken them. The summer sun poured warm light across the quiet valley as Silver Creek shimmered like polished glass beneath an endless blue sky. Wildflowers swayed along the grassy banks while tall cottonwoods whispered softly in the afternoon breeze, their leaves dancing with a sound that always reminded Emily Carter of gentle applause. Most people in Ashbrook Village adored the creek for its beauty, but they never stayed after noon. They crossed its old wooden bridge quickly, lowered their voices whenever they mentioned its name, and warned every child never to wander near the deepest bend where the water turned dark enough to reflect almost nothing. Emily had heard the stories since she was little. They claimed an ancient guardian slept beneath the surface, unseen by human eyes, watching every ripple that disturbed the water. The elders insisted no one should ever swim there, especially during the full moon season, when the river supposedly belonged to the wolves. Emily never believed those stories. She believed lonely places inspired frightened imaginations, and she believed kindness mattered more than fear. At 22, she was known throughout the village as the sweetest Omega anyone had ever met. She greeted strangers with a smile, carried baskets for elderly neighbors without being asked, and always stopped to rescue frightened birds tangled in blackberry vines or lost fawns separated from their mothers. Yet no amount of kindness could erase the quiet judgment that followed her wherever she went. Other wolves whispered that she was too gentle for a harsh world. They laughed that she spent more time helping injured animals than searching for a powerful mate. Emily pretended not to hear them, but sometimes, when evenings settled over the hills, their words lingered longer than she wished. Today the heat settled across the valley like a warm blanket, pushing even the birds into silent shade. Emily wiped a strand of chestnut hair away from her face and smiled as she stepped through the tall grass toward the hidden curve of Silver Creek. The air smelled of fresh pine, cool stone, and wild mint growing along the shoreline. It was peaceful here, untouched by gossip or expectations. She slipped off her shoes and rested them beneath a smooth river rock before stepping carefully into the clear water. It felt wonderfully cool against her ankles, sending tiny circles across the surface that sparkled beneath the afternoon sun. She laughed quietly to herself, letting the peaceful silence wash away every unkind word she had heard that week. The water reached her knees as she wandered farther into the gentle current, unaware that the deepest pool rested only a few yards ahead. Below the bright reflections, beyond the dancing sunlight and drifting leaves, something ancient stirred without making a sound. Far beneath the surface, hidden where the river became a world of blue shadows, two brilliant golden eyes slowly opened. They did not burn with anger or hunger. They watched with quiet curiosity, studying the young Omega whose fearless heart had crossed a boundary no one else dared approach. Emily paused unexpectedly, a strange warmth brushing against her instincts as though someone had whispered her name without speaking. She glanced around, finding only the breeze and the gentle murmur of flowing water. Then the current shifted beneath her feet. Not violently, not enough to frighten her, just enough to make her wonder why the river suddenly felt as though it had taken its very first breath. Emily remained perfectly still, her heartbeat slowing as she listened to the quiet rhythm of the creek. The strange sensation beneath her feet did not feel threatening. It felt almost deliberate, as though the water itself had become aware of her presence. Tiny ripples drifted outward without a breeze to create them, and the sunlight dancing across the surface suddenly fractured into shimmering patterns that reached farther than the current should have allowed. She frowned, glancing toward the darker bend where the creek widened into a deep natural pool surrounded by smooth stone cliffs and hanging willow branches. Every instinct told her she should step back toward the shore, yet another feeling, softer and impossible to explain, gently invited her forward. Emily had always trusted her heart more than rumors. She took one careful step, then another, until the cool water reached just below her waist. The air seemed unusually quiet now. Even the songbirds hidden among the trees had stopped singing. She looked around, expecting to find a deer or perhaps a family of ducks that had wandered close enough to disturb the peaceful silence. But there was nothing except sunlight, drifting leaves, and the endless reflection of the summer sky. Then she noticed something beneath the crystal-clear water. At first she assumed it was a large fallen log resting along the rocky bottom, but the shape moved with surprising grace. It circled slowly beneath her, never rushing, never breaking the surface. Emily held her breath. The enormous shadow was unlike any fish she had ever seen, and it glided through the water with effortless confidence. Instead of panic, curiosity settled over her. She crouched carefully, extending one hand until her fingertips barely touched the cool surface. The shadow stopped moving. For one suspended moment, the entire creek became perfectly still. Then the water shimmered as two brilliant golden eyes appeared just beneath the surface, looking directly into hers through the clear current. Emily gasped softly, not because she felt afraid, but because those eyes carried something unexpectedly familiar. They were intelligent, calm, ancient. She had seen frightened animals before, injured animals, protective mothers guarding their young, but never had she looked into eyes that seemed capable of understanding every thought passing through her mind. Neither of them moved. The silent connection lingered until a gentle current brushed against her hand. The enormous creature rose slightly, revealing the outline of a magnificent white wolf beneath the water. Its thick fur flowed gracefully with the current like strands of silver silk, untouched by the river itself. Emily blinked, wondering whether the sunlight was playing tricks on her. Wolves did not remain beneath water. Wolves certainly did not appear completely calm while doing so. Yet this one showed no struggle, only quiet patience. Something near its broad shoulder caught her attention. Wedged between pale strands of fur was a narrow branch tangled with river weeds, wrapped tightly enough to restrict its movement. The wolf lowered its head slightly, never breaking eye contact. Emily understood the gesture without knowing how. It was not asking for rescue. It was asking for trust. Her pulse quickened as she slowly reached farther into the cool water, speaking in the same gentle voice she always used with frightened animals. "It is all right. I will not hurt you." The wolf remained perfectly still. Its golden eyes softened, and for the briefest instant Emily could have sworn gratitude flickered within them. As her fingers carefully touched the branch caught against its shoulder, a warm pulse traveled through the water like invisible sunlight, and somewhere far beyond the peaceful creek, deep within the forest that surrounded the hidden kingdom of Blackwood, an ancient bond quietly awakened after centuries of waiting. Emily wrapped both hands around the tangled branch and pulled with slow, careful movements, determined not to frighten the extraordinary creature before her. The river carried the scent of fresh earth and pine as gentle currents slipped around her arms. For a brief moment the branch refused to move, trapped beneath layers of woven weeds that had tightened over time. She adjusted her grip and tried again, whispering softly as though speaking to a nervous horse. The great white wolf remained perfectly motionless. Its steady golden eyes never left hers, and there was an unmistakable calm within them that filled Emily with unexpected confidence. Finally, the branch shifted free with a quiet splash, drifting away on the current until it disappeared downstream. The thick river weeds loosened as well, floating harmlessly toward the shallows. Emily smiled with quiet relief. "There," she said gently. "That should feel much better." The wolf slowly lifted its massive head. The graceful movement sent tiny waves across the surface, but not a single drop of water disturbed its magnificent white coat beneath the river. Emily had never witnessed anything so impossible. Every lesson she had learned about nature insisted this could not exist, yet her own eyes told another story. The wolf lowered its nose toward her open hand. For one suspended heartbeat, she wondered whether she should pull away, but something deep inside urged her to remain still. Its cool nose lightly brushed her fingertips with remarkable gentleness. The instant they touched, a warm glow spread through her palm, flowing softly up her arm like the comforting warmth of early morning sunlight after a cool night. Emily inhaled sharply. It did not hurt. Instead, it filled her with a peaceful certainty she had never experienced before. Images flashed across her mind too quickly to fully understand. Endless forests covered in silver mist, towering stone walls rising above ancient cliffs, hundreds of wolves standing beneath a glowing full moon with their heads bowed before a lone white wolf whose golden eyes shone brighter than the stars above. Then, just as suddenly, the visions vanished. Emily blinked several times, trying to steady her breathing. "What was that?" she whispered, though she knew no answer would come. The wolf stepped backward through the water, never breaking eye contact. Sunlight reflected around its powerful form until it almost appeared to be made from liquid silver instead of fur. Then it turned gracefully toward the deepest part of the pool. Before disappearing into the blue shadows below, it looked back one final time. The silent glance carried unmistakable gratitude, but there was something else hidden within it, something that felt remarkably close to a promise. A heartbeat later, the wolf vanished beneath the dark water as though it had dissolved into the river itself. Emily stared into the quiet pool, waiting for another ripple or another glimpse of white beneath the surface, but only drifting leaves remained. She slowly walked back toward the shore, still trying to make sense of everything she had witnessed. Her shoes waited exactly where she had left them beneath the smooth river rock. As she slipped them on, she noticed a single white feather resting beside them. She was certain it had not been there before. Curious, she picked it up. The feather felt surprisingly warm despite the cool breeze, and delicate silver patterns shimmered along its edges whenever the sunlight touched them. Emily smiled, believing nature had offered her an unusual keepsake from an unforgettable afternoon. Far beyond the creek, hidden within the ancient Blackwood kingdom, a tall man standing alone on a stone balcony suddenly pressed one hand against his chest as the invisible bond reached him across miles of forest. His silver eyes lifted toward the distant horizon, and for the first time in many years, the Alpha King found himself smiling without understanding why. The following morning arrived wrapped in golden sunlight that spilled across the rolling hills surrounding Ashbrook Village, yet Emily could not stop thinking about the impossible encounter at Silver Creek. She had slept only a few hours, waking again and again with the memory of those calm golden eyes and the strange warmth that had flowed through her hand. The white feather rested on the small wooden table beside her bed, glowing softly whenever the first rays of dawn touched its delicate silver patterns. She picked it up once more before leaving for work, turning it gently between her fingers. It still felt warm, as though it carried a heartbeat hidden deep within its fragile shape. Smiling to herself, she carefully tucked it inside the pocket of her light blue cardigan before stepping outside. The village was already alive with the sounds of wagon wheels, friendly greetings, and merchants arranging fresh produce beneath colorful canvas awnings. Emily greeted everyone she passed with the same gentle smile she always offered, though many barely acknowledged her. A few young wolves exchanged amused glances as she walked by, whispering quietly behind her back, but she chose not to let their opinions steal the peaceful feeling that still lingered from the river. She stopped beside an elderly florist whose hands trembled while lifting buckets of fresh wildflowers. Without saying a word, Emily carried the heavy containers onto the display table, earning a grateful smile from the woman. Moments like these always reminded her that kindness never depended on whether anyone noticed. Across the village square, a tall stranger dressed in a simple black coat quietly observed the morning crowd. Nothing about his appearance suggested wealth or authority. His dark clothing was free of royal symbols, and his calm expression blended easily among ordinary travelers passing through town. Yet there was something quietly commanding about the way he stood, as though confidence surrounded him as naturally as sunlight. His silver eyes searched every face crossing the square with patient purpose until they finally settled upon Emily. The moment he saw her, the invisible bond awakened again inside his chest with unmistakable certainty. Rowan Blackwood remained perfectly still. After centuries of ruling the most powerful wolf kingdom in the region, he had learned never to trust coincidence. The mysterious pull he had felt since yesterday had led him here, and now the young woman from the river stood only a short distance away, laughing softly as she helped a little boy gather apples that had rolled across the dusty road after his basket tipped over. She had no idea who he was. She smiled at everyone with the same gentle warmth she had shown the white wolf beneath the water. Rowan watched quietly as the child thanked her before running back toward his mother. No one else had paused to help. No one else had even noticed. A faint smile touched Rowan's face. Compassion that appeared when no reward was expected was exceedingly rare, even among his own people. Emily looked up by chance, her eyes meeting those of the unfamiliar traveler for only a brief second. Something about him seemed oddly familiar, though she could not explain why. Perhaps it was the calm confidence in his expression or the strange feeling that she had seen those eyes somewhere before. Before she could think further, another customer approached the flower stand asking for directions, drawing her attention away. Rowan remained where he stood for another quiet moment before turning toward the village inn. He had not come to reveal his crown. Not yet. Destiny had already introduced them once beneath the silent river. Now he intended to discover whether the kindness she had shown a mysterious white wolf was simply part of her nature, or whether fate had truly chosen the one heart capable of changing both their worlds forever. By late afternoon, the warmth of the day had softened into a pleasant breeze that carried the scent of fresh bread and blooming roses through Ashbrook Village. The square filled with cheerful voices as families finished their shopping before sunset, and Emily continued helping the elderly florist arrange colorful bouquets for the evening customers. Her hands moved carefully from one basket to another, making certain every flower remained fresh despite the lingering summer heat. Across the street, Rowan sat quietly beneath the shaded porch of the village inn with a cup of tea untouched before him. From where he sat, he could observe nearly every corner of the square without drawing attention to himself. His silver eyes never lingered with suspicion or judgment. Instead, they watched with patient curiosity. Throughout the day, he had witnessed Emily helping strangers without hesitation. She had carried groceries for an older gentleman, comforted a frightened little girl who had become separated from her parents for a few anxious minutes, and even paused to refill a thirsty horse's water bucket before continuing on her way. None of those small acts appeared planned. They simply reflected who she was when no one expected anything from her. As the afternoon wore on, another group of young wolves approached the flower stand. Their clothes were finely tailored, and their confident smiles carried the unmistakable pride of families with respected bloodlines. One of the young women glanced toward Emily before quietly laughing with her friends. Another lifted a bouquet, examined it for only a moment, then placed it back with an exaggerated sigh. "It is a shame," she said loudly enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "Such beautiful flowers deserve someone more impressive to sell them." A few people smiled awkwardly while others pretended not to notice. Emily simply continued arranging the remaining bouquets without responding. She had heard similar remarks before and understood that answering them rarely changed anyone's heart. The florist looked embarrassed and started to apologize, but Emily gently squeezed the older woman's hand and smiled. "It is all right," she said softly. "Flowers bloom for everyone. They do not choose who deserves their beauty." The elderly woman smiled with grateful eyes. Rowan watched the exchange carefully. Most people met ridicule with anger, wounded pride, or sharp words meant to defend themselves. Emily answered it with quiet grace that asked for nothing in return. The group eventually wandered away, disappointed that their comments had failed to provoke the reaction they expected. As the crowd slowly thinned, an elderly traveler entered the square carrying an unusually heavy suitcase. He paused after only a few steps, clearly exhausted from the long walk beneath the afternoon sun. Before anyone else noticed, Emily hurried across the street with her familiar gentle smile. "May I help you carry that?" she asked. The man hesitated, then gratefully accepted. Together they walked toward the village inn, speaking pleasantly along the way. Rowan stood as they approached the entrance. The elderly traveler thanked Emily once more before disappearing inside. Emily turned to leave, but her eyes met Rowan's again from only a few feet away. For an instant neither of them spoke. The same strange familiarity settled quietly between them, stronger now than before. Emily noticed the remarkable silver color of his eyes and felt the unexplained warmth stirring once again inside her chest. Rowan recognized the identical kindness he had witnessed beneath the river, unchanged despite the unkindness she had endured throughout the day. He offered a polite smile. "You seem to help everyone," he said calmly. Emily returned the smile without hesitation. "The world feels a little lighter when people carry less by themselves." Her simple answer lingered in Rowan's thoughts long after she walked away. He had come searching for certainty. Instead, with every passing hour, destiny seemed to be answering him more clearly than words ever could. The next morning arrived beneath a sky painted with soft white clouds drifting lazily above the valley. Emily left her cottage carrying a small basket filled with fresh bread and homemade berry preserves for an elderly widow who lived near the edge of the forest. The familiar trail wound through fields of tall grass sparkling with morning dew, and every step filled the air with the sweet fragrance of wild lavender. She smiled as bluebirds darted from fence post to fence post, unaware that someone quietly followed from a respectful distance. Rowan had risen before sunrise, curious whether the compassion he had witnessed inside the village would remain when no one was watching. Wearing the same simple black coat, he blended naturally into the woodland path, careful never to intrude upon Emily's morning routine. She stopped beside the widow's cottage, leaving the basket on the porch before gently knocking on the weathered wooden door. When the elderly woman answered, Emily accepted nothing in return except a grateful hug and a warm smile before continuing toward the creek. Rowan remained hidden among the towering pines, thoughtful as he watched her disappear down the narrow trail. She expected no praise, no reward, and no recognition. She simply gave because it was part of who she was. A faint smile crossed his face. Very few people understood that true strength often revealed itself through quiet choices rather than loud victories. As Emily approached Silver Creek once again, she paused beneath the shade of the old willow branches. The peaceful river looked exactly as it had the day before, calm enough to mirror the drifting clouds above. She reached into her cardigan pocket and removed the mysterious white feather, studying the delicate silver markings that shimmered softly in the morning light. "I still do not understand you," she whispered with a gentle laugh. "But somehow I feel you are safe." She tucked the feather back into her pocket, just as laughter echoed from farther upstream. A group of children had gathered near a fallen tree stretching halfway across the creek. They were daring one another to cross its narrow trunk while balancing with outstretched arms. Emily smiled at their playful confidence until one little boy suddenly froze halfway across. A stronger breeze rustled the branches overhead, and the child looked down at the flowing water with growing uncertainty. He did not fall, but fear kept him from moving another step in either direction. The other children shouted conflicting advice, only making him more nervous. Without hesitation, Emily walked to the edge of the creek and spoke in a calm, reassuring voice. "Do not look at the water," she called gently. "Just look at me. Take one small step at a time." The frightened boy nodded. His breathing slowly steadied as he focused entirely on Emily's encouraging smile. One careful step became another until he safely reached the riverbank. The children burst into cheerful laughter, and the relieved boy threw his arms around Emily in gratitude before running back to his friends. Hidden among the trees, Rowan watched every moment in thoughtful silence. There had been no danger that required extraordinary courage, yet Emily had responded exactly as she always did. She had chosen patience over panic and reassurance over attention. As the children disappeared along the trail, Rowan quietly stepped out from the forest. Emily turned at the sound of approaching footsteps, surprised to see the mysterious traveler once again. Before either of them could speak, a gentle breeze swept across the creek, lifting the white feather from Emily's pocket into the air. It floated gracefully between them before landing softly in Rowan's open hand. The instant his fingers touched it, the silver patterns brightened like moonlight reflected on still water, and both of them felt the invisible bond grow stronger, though neither yet understood that destiny itself had just offered its second unmistakable sign. The feather rested quietly in Rowan's hand, its silver patterns glowing for only a heartbeat before fading back into soft white. Emily stared at it in amazement, certain she had imagined the brief flash of light. Rowan looked down at the feather with calm recognition, then carefully offered it back to her. "I believe this belongs to you," he said warmly. Emily accepted it with a grateful smile, her fingers brushing his for the briefest instant. The familiar warmth returned immediately, stronger than before, flowing through both of them like a gentle current beneath still water. Neither spoke for several seconds. The peaceful silence somehow felt more natural than conversation. Finally, Emily slipped the feather back into her pocket. "It seems to like traveling," she said with a quiet laugh. Rowan smiled. "Perhaps it knows exactly where it wishes to be." Before Emily could ask what he meant, a distant howl echoed through the forest. It was not frightening. It sounded ancient, almost ceremonial, carrying across the trees before fading into the morning breeze. Emily looked toward the hills with quiet curiosity. "There are more wolves near the village than usual," she observed. Rowan followed her gaze. "Sometimes they gather when something important is about to change." She tilted her head slightly, wondering whether he was speaking from experience or simply repeating an old legend. There was something unusual about this traveler. He carried himself with effortless confidence, yet never spoke with pride. His words often sounded as though they held meanings hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered later. As they slowly walked beside the creek, Emily noticed small wildflowers growing between smooth stones near the bank. Several delicate stems had been bent beneath fallen branches after the previous night's breeze. Without hesitation, she knelt to lift the branches away, gently straightening each flower until they once again faced the sunlight. Rowan watched the quiet gesture with thoughtful eyes. Most people would never have noticed such tiny details. Emily cared even for things that could offer her nothing in return. "You always stop to help," Rowan said softly. Emily smiled without looking up. "The world gives us enough chances to walk past one another. I would rather stop when I can." Rowan considered her words carefully. They echoed the oldest lessons ever taught among the first Alpha Kings, wisdom that many powerful leaders had forgotten over the centuries. Strength existed to protect, never to dominate. Compassion was never weakness. It was the rarest form of courage. A cool breeze swept through the trees once again, carrying with it the familiar scent of fresh river water and pine. Emily suddenly noticed faint ripples spreading across the deepest part of the creek, even though nothing had touched the surface. She stopped walking. The water shimmered beneath the sunlight until a magnificent white wolf slowly emerged from the shadows beneath the clear current. It stepped gracefully onto a flat stone rising just above the waterline, its brilliant coat sparkling with countless drops that seemed to vanish before reaching the ground. The enormous animal stood silently, its golden eyes fixed entirely upon Emily. She felt no fear, only wonder. "You came back," she whispered almost instinctively. Emily slowly extended her hand exactly as she had beside the river before. The white wolf lowered its great head, allowing her fingertips to gently rest against the soft fur between its ears. The instant she touched it, the air around the creek filled with a gentle silver glow that danced across the flowing water like scattered moonlight in broad daylight. Emily closed her eyes, overwhelmed by a feeling of peace unlike anything she had ever known. When she opened them again, the white wolf was gone. Standing in its place, only a few feet away, was Rowan, wearing the same simple black coat, his silver eyes filled with quiet kindness. For a long, silent moment, Emily could only stare as every impossible memory from the river suddenly found its missing answer. Emily's breath caught as she searched Rowan's face, trying to reconcile the quiet traveler before her with the magnificent white wolf that had vanished only a heartbeat earlier. The silver glow slowly faded from the water, leaving only the gentle murmur of the creek and the rustling willow branches overhead. Rowan did not step closer. "Why did you trust me?" Rowan smiled gently. "Because you trusted me first." Before Emily could answer, the peaceful silence was interrupted by the sound of approaching voices. Several village elders and a group of respected wolves emerged from the forest trail, stopping abruptly when they noticed the two strangers standing together beside the creek. Their expressions shifted from surprise to confusion. One elder stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Emily. "There you are," he said with restrained disappointment. "We have been searching for you. People are beginning to wonder why you spend so much time alone near this river." Another villager glanced toward Rowan with polite curiosity before looking back at Emily. "And now you are keeping company with a traveler whose name no one even knows." Emily lowered her eyes respectfully. "He has done nothing wrong," she answered calmly. "We were only talking." The murmurs among the group grew louder. Some exchanged uncertain looks, while others quietly repeated old stories about outsiders and forgotten legends surrounding the creek. Rowan remained silent, observing each face without the slightest hint of irritation. He had stood before councils of kings and ancient guardians. The opinions of frightened strangers held no power over him. Yet he also understood that fear often grew from misunderstanding rather than cruelty. One elder sighed softly. "Emily, your kindness has always been admirable, but kindness without caution can invite trouble." Emily lifted her chin with quiet confidence. "I believe judging someone before knowing them invites even greater trouble." Her gentle reply surprised everyone, including Rowan. She had spoken without anger, without raising her voice, yet her words carried undeniable honesty. For a long moment, no one responded. Then the village square bell echoed faintly through the valley, announcing the unexpected arrival of distinguished visitors at the town center. Several horses approached along the main road, their polished harnesses decorated with the unmistakable silver crest of Blackwood Kingdom. The elders immediately straightened with visible concern. "Royal messengers," someone whispered. The group hurried back toward the village, eager to discover why the kingdom's representatives had arrived without warning. Emily looked at Rowan in confusion. "Do you know what this is about?" Rowan's expression remained composed. "I believe I do." She searched his face, sensing that another truth remained hidden behind those quiet silver eyes. "Will you tell me?" she asked softly. Rowan looked toward the distant village where the royal banners now fluttered above the rooftops. A peaceful smile touched his face. "Very soon," he replied. As they began walking together toward Ashbrook Village, neither of them noticed dozens of wolves emerging silently along the distant hillsides, each lowering its head toward Rowan with deep respect before disappearing once more into the forest. Emily saw only the gentle traveler beside her. The rest of the valley was already preparing to welcome its true king. As Emily and Rowan entered the village square, every conversation slowly faded into silence. The royal riders had already dismounted, their silver cloaks catching the afternoon sunlight as they stood in perfect formation beside their magnificent horses. Villagers gathered along the edges of the square, whispering with anxious curiosity as the captain of the royal guard stepped forward. Without hesitation, he lowered himself onto one knee. One by one, every rider followed until the entire delegation bowed their heads toward the quiet traveler standing beside Emily. A wave of astonishment swept through the crowd. The elders stared in disbelief. The same villagers who had barely noticed Rowan only moments earlier now watched the impossible unfold before their eyes. The captain spoke with calm respect. "Your Majesty, the council has awaited your return." Emily turned slowly toward Rowan, her heart racing as every unanswered question suddenly found its place. The peaceful stranger, the mysterious white wolf, the ancient bond she could not explain, and the quiet authority he carried wherever he walked all became one undeniable truth. Rowan met her gaze with the same gentle smile she had first seen reflected beneath the clear waters of Silver Creek. "I wanted you to know me before you knew my crown," he said softly. Emily could barely find her voice. "You are the Alpha King." Rowan inclined his head. "I am Rowan Blackwood." A stunned silence settled across the square. The young wolves who had once mocked Emily lowered their eyes in embarrassment, while the village elders exchanged uneasy glances as they remembered every warning they had offered her. Rowan slowly stepped to the center of the square and addressed everyone with quiet confidence rather than overwhelming authority. "Several days ago, before any title mattered, before anyone recognized who I was, this young woman offered kindness without asking for a name, a reward, or a reason. She saw only someone who needed help." His words carried through the square with remarkable clarity. Compassion offered freely is the greatest strength any heart can possess. Emily felt warmth fill her chest as Rowan turned toward her once more. "Many admire power," he continued, "but power without kindness cannot lead." Emily reminded me of a truth that every alpha should remember. The captain of the guard smiled with quiet understanding while the elders lowered their heads respectfully. No one spoke. No one argued. They simply listened. Rowan extended his hand toward Emily, not as a command, but as an invitation. She looked into his silver eyes and recognized the same peaceful certainty that had first greeted her beneath the river. Smiling gently, she placed her hand in his. At that very moment, a cool breeze swept through the square, carrying white flower petals across the cobblestones before drifting towards Silver Creek. Curious villagers turned to watch as the river beyond the village shimmered with soft silver light beneath the afternoon sun. The mysterious white feather slipped from Emily's pocket and floated gracefully into the air before dissolving into hundreds of tiny sparkling lights that disappeared above the water. The oldest elder smiled through grateful eyes. "The river has accepted its promise," he whispered. Rowan and Emily walked together toward the creek where everything had begun. They stood quietly along the peaceful bank as the gentle current reflected the golden colors of the setting sun. No grand ceremony was needed. No palace walls surrounded them. The place where a compassionate Omega had reached out to an unknown white wolf had become the place where two lives were forever joined by trust, respect, and destiny. As twilight settled over the valley, a distant chorus of wolves echoed through the surrounding hills, not as a warning, but as a blessing carried on the evening wind. Emily looked toward the glowing horizon and smiled, finally understanding that true destiny had never arrived through fear or power. It had begun with one simple choice to show kindness when no one else would. And that single moment of compassion had changed two worlds forever.